All right, I will go ahead and start the meeting. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Arlington NAACP monthly meeting for September 2020. My name is Elisa Simmons. I'm the president of the branch and like to welcome everybody on to the meeting this evening. We are going to open up like we traditionally do with a word of prayer that will be led by our member Ruby Woolridge. And before she starts, I would like to ask that everybody go on mute so we won't struggle with audio difficulties this evening. And Ms. Woolridge, if you would open us up with prayer, I'd appreciate it.
Let's bow our heads. Gracious Father, we count it all joy that we can come together today via the internet and invoke your power and your authority in the midst of our meeting. We pray that you will be the great facilitator, that you will get all hearts and minds clear so that we can focus on the business at hand, Lord. We thank you for the leadership of this organization. We thank you for the leadership of this county. We thank you for all those who are present, Heavenly Father, and we ask you to keep us all in your care and provide a hedge of protection around us to keep us from all hurt, harm, and danger. We thank you, Lord, and we praise your name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. To our host, I am receiving texts from people who would like to be let into the meeting, so I think I'll be dealing with that for a while now. So we are going to have a brief business meeting, and then we will start with our program shortly after. I think they have me on task to end the business meeting at 6:45. And so I want to first start out by telling you and inviting everybody to attend the NAACP's National Convention. This is a great opportunity to do so because it will be virtual and it will be at no cost. So I think we're going to put in the chat a link to register for the convention. You will be able to attend most of the sessions and trainings. You will not be able to attend the plenary sessions in which voting takes place. We do have delegates and alternates that we have had to register, and there's a cost for those folks. So the folks representing the branch will be at the voting sessions, but you're welcome to attend anything else, and I encourage you to attend. There is typically lots that go on at the National Convention, and lots of folks and celebrities and civil rights icons that attend. So please, and I know once you look at the schedule, it will look long, the days will look long, but of course you're there virtually and you can hop in and out at your convenience. So we'll put that in the link, or you can just go to naacp.org and register for the convention. Just go straight to the national site. We have really great news to share. We, the branch, have been the beneficiaries of the generosity of the Texas Rangers Baseball Foundation. The branch, along with 9 other groups, were given grants of $10,000. Last Thursday, I think it was, our treasurer and myself, Jason Thomas, attended a socially distanced dinner and presentation at the new Globe Life Field, and picked up or did the check presentation and that type of thing. So we are extremely grateful to the Texas Rangers Foundation for their recognition of our work and our efforts in the Arlington community. We've worked with them on a number of projects, particularly the construction of Texas Live and Globe Life Park, fighting and advocating. And really, I wouldn't call it much of a fight, but advocating and collaborating to ensure that African American businesses, local businesses, and other minority businesses got opportunities on the construction of Texas Live and Globe Life Park. It was not an easy process, that is for sure, but it worked out, and it's good to have partners like the Texas Rangers baseball organization that is willing to listen and work together, collaborate on issues of importance. We can fuss and fight and protest about all things, but economic justice, economics is key to the advancement of anybody. And so we're glad that we were able to help businesses get contracts on those two projects. So anyway, we're thankful that the Texas Rangers recognizes our work there and our work with our AXO program. They have been particularly interested in AXO, and they have been supportive over the years. But the amount they donated this time was above what they normally do. And I think there was another donation of $2,500 also from the Rangers and another of their partners. So again, that is good news, and we could certainly use it, especially during a time where we were not able to have our annual gala. So thank you to Rob Matwick and Karen and Justin over at the Texas Rangers for thinking of us. Also, I'm not sure if our legal redress chairperson is on, or our criminal justice chairperson, but I wanted them to give an update on the police chief search in Arlington. I don't have a whole lot of information. I chatted with them today briefly. I think the city of Arlington has narrowed, if I heard correctly, the field down to 24 applicants or candidates for the police chief's position. The applicant pool was well over 100 when this was. So soon the community panels will begin, and there will also be a police chief's panel interviewing candidates for the police chief's position. Also wanted to talk about, just not even at length, but to share that this fact, and the fact is that the Arlington NAACP, with regard to policing, supports Citizens Review Board with subpoena power, and we have been working with diverse partners throughout the community to fine-tune what we expect that to look like. And so you'll be hearing more from us in the coming month about our advocacy and our push for a Citizens Police Review Board or community police review board with subpoena power in Arlington. It is something we will strongly advocate for and fight for here in Arlington. Let's see, I want to, you'll hear more from the Political Action Committee. Here tonight is their meeting, that committee's meeting, and it has been very active over the past couple of months in preparation for the November election, and particularly early voting. This branch is going to push for citizens to get out and vote early. The communications committee and I met yesterday, and I think we've come up with a theme and a slogan for our push, our efforts to push people out to vote early. The governor has expanded early voting. It's October 13th through October 30th. And so there's really absolutely no reason that people should not vote early. And I have an expectation that everybody at this meeting tonight will vote, but we have a responsibility to get our neighbors and friends and cousins and relatives and others who might not have as high a propensity to go vote. We have a responsibility to get them to the polls. And so I'll let Damon Gardner, our political action chair, and our guests talk more about that tonight. And I am going to toss it over to our health committee chair, Lisa Staples Weary, for a brief health committee update.
Good evening, everybody. So for right now, I just want to give some update information regarding COVID-19 and specifically in the Arlington area. As of August the 30th, we had 609 deaths, but current today, we have 46 people that are hospitalized in Arlington and 14 people that are currently on ventilators. We have 397 active locations in the area, and the most positive cases for COVID-19 are in the 76010 zip code. So there are still locations where you can go and get tested if you needed to get tested. If you've been around someone who has been diagnosed or exposed to someone that has COVID-19, I highly recommend that you get tested. I also want to put out right now, the flu vaccines are out. I strongly encourage everyone to get a flu vaccine and go ahead and get it now between now and the end of the month, because it actually takes 2 weeks for the vaccine to be effective in your system. So if you get it now, by October, you will be covered. They are planning that this will be an extremely high season for the common flu. And we're encouraging everyone, children 6 months and older, everyone 6 months and older, to get a flu shot. 65 and older, there is a separate vaccine that has a little bit more in it to cover you because of the immune systems at 65 and older. So please get your flu shots. Also just wanted to cover real quick to let you know that they are spraying in Arlington, in the Tarrant County area for West Nile. Tonight, they'll be spraying in the Bedford-Euless-Hurst area. So they're going to different locations in Tarrant County. It started on last Friday, and they'll be spraying because there are some active cases of West Nile in Tarrant County. That's all I have. Thank you very much. Get that flu shot.
Lisa is a school nurse in Arlington Independent School District. Can you, when does school start back in Arlington?
Yes, it started on the 17th of August virtual, but they expect for it to students to be in the building on September 28th. And that is the date that's given right now, unless the numbers in Arlington go up after this past weekend. So if the numbers come up positive, more numbers come up positive from this past weekend, which will be 2 weeks from the 28th, then we won't start. But for right now, the start date is September 28th, but in person at all schools.
Okay. All right. Thank you, ma'am. Oh, wait, don't go yet.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you give us an update about the AISD back to school?
Yeah,
We're
there the yeah they gave out 10,000 backpacks. The date was changed from August the 8th to the 15th, and it was at the AT&T Stadium. The back to school event this year was a drive-through, so parents drove through, and the backpacks were put in the students. In the parents' trunk. Approximately 10,000 backpacks were given away. Any backpacks that they had left over will be directly sent to the schools for those schools, and those staff will be responsible for getting it out to those kids who didn't get the supplies.
Okay. Thank you very much. The reason I asked Lisa to give the update is because typically for the back to school event at AT&T Stadium, the Arlington NAACP is responsible for everything health related. So all of the booths, the setup, the dental screenings, the vision screenings, the eyeglasses, and even haircuts, and having the different health agencies out there. Lisa and Dr. Barbara Odom Wesley coordinate that for the entire thing and for the branch. Because it wasn't in person this time, we still participated. I think there were different vouchers and things in the backpacks.
Yes.
And so we also volunteered out there, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank. I reached out to the fraternities just so we'd have enough volunteers out there, because we knew there were going to be a lot of people driving through, and we didn't want kind of what happened in Mansfield to happen when they did their technology pickup. So thank you to our life members, Omega Psi Phi fraternity, the OGG chapter, and also thank you to Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, the Nu Pi Lambda chapter here in Arlington, and Phi Beta Sigma fraternity members that showed up, the Arlington chapter that showed up out there and helped distribute. Your members showed up in good numbers, and I'm proud and thankful for that. So thank you. Is our secretary on to talk about branch elections?
Yes.
Okay. Jill McGrew, do you want to go ahead and talk about upcoming branch elections for officers?
I can. We have decided to do all of our elections virtually this year. So during this meeting, we are going to select our nominating committee. Our nominating committee shall be elected with 5 members and no more than 15 members of the branch who are in good standing. What good standing means is just that your membership is current 30 days prior to the election. So I'll just talk about a couple of the duties that are going to be necessary for the members of the nominating committee, whoever is selected. I'm going to read this just so that I don't miss anything. The nominating committee may nominate any member in good standing of the branch. Therefore, it is necessary for the committee to consider the entire membership of the branch so as to assure that the best qualified members are considered. For the purpose of the running of the office for the term, members in good standing shall mean members who are bona fide on May 1st of the election year and remain a continuous member of the branch throughout the election process, and must live in or work within the branch's jurisdiction. Being a part of the nominating committee does not prelude the nomination of any member thereof as a candidate for an office or as an at-large member of the executive committee. The nominating committee shall make it known to the general membership that it is available to interview members interested in being considered for office. The nominating committee shall nominate only those persons who have given written consent to be nominated. Before the branch accepts the nominating committee report, the secretary shall verify that each nominee has given written consent. Okay, what that is a written consent form that has to be filled out, notifying the branch that you would like to run for whatever position. And you would have to have 3 signatures from 3 members who are active within our branch. And we will have a copy of that posted on our Facebook platform so that you guys can print it and send it back in to us so that we will be able to, with your signatures, and we will be able to know that you want to be considered for the positions. And that is pretty much all I have regarding the election. We just need to, anyone who wants to volunteer to be on the nominating committee within 10 days of this meeting, then I will schedule a meeting for all the nominating committees to go over their duties again. So if we have anyone who is interested, the person who is going to be, it cannot be a bunch of committee members. It has to be no more than 2 committee members. So if we can select from 5 to 15. So if we have anybody who is interested in these roles, if you would just raise your hand, or you can write a comment in the chat, and we will take down those names. And for the sake of time, you guys can do this while we're going through this process. And then I will announce the people who decided that they wanted to be a part of the nominating committee, just so that we can go ahead and get started with our program. And that is all I have. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Do we have to vote on the nominating committee?
We do.
Oh.
But if people want to decide what they want to do instead of us, or we can go ahead and do it now if you guys want to, but I want to give people an opportunity to think about it. And then before the call is over, we can circle back and then proceed with the remaining of it.
Okay. So we need at least 5 people, up to 15.
That is correct.
Is that okay? And we don't have to have 15, but at least 5
You don't
people.
have to have 15, at least 5. 2 who are executive members is fine. The other 3 cannot be.
Okay. And our executive committee consists of all officers, just for everybody's information, and committee chairs. So, for example, Jill is an officer, I'm an officer, Lisa Staples Wary is a committee chair. So we have lots of committee chairs. So sounds like only 2
That is
chairs
correct.
only.
That's correct.
Okay.
Hello?
Elisa, I think we've lost you.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Jill, you might want to go ahead.
These information, officer elections, every officer is up for, every officer position is open. So from president, vice president, sometimes we have second vice president, treasurer, assistant treasurer, secretary, and assistant secretary. So those are the officer positions that we will be electing in November. And they will be installed in January. And the terms are 2-year terms. So if you are interested in those positions, as the secretary has said, we will place, there is a form that you have to fill out, and then you have to get those 3 signatures. So we'll place that form on our website, Facebook, Twitter. I think you can attach a Word document, I don't know, and Instagram. But we'll get the self-nomination form out there, and you have to get the signatures of 3 financial members of the branch. So keep that in mind. President, vice president, perhaps the second vice president, treasurer, assistant treasurer, secretary, and assistant secretary. The committee chairs are appointed at a later date, usually by January, by the executive committee. So we need nominating committee members, and the floor is open for nominations or volunteers. You can volunteer as well. You don't have to wait for somebody to nominate you. And we have a speaker coming up, and so I'd like to kind of blow through this.
I'll volunteer.
Who said that?
That was me, Damon.
Okay.
So Damon Gardner is volunteering. Okay.
Yes.
Mhm.
Billy Wilson.
Gwen Hicks.
Come on, come on, come on.
Madam President, I'd like to nominate Carl Warren.
Hold on, we already have two executive committee members already. We have Damon and we have Billy.
Mhm.
I will withdraw the nomination.
Thank you, sir.
Did you get Gwen Hicks?
Yes.
I did.
Okay, thank you.
I'll do it.
Lisa,
Nope.
you're executive member.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
I need people who,
Deborah,
go ahead.
I'll do it.
I'm sorry, who was that?
Deborah.
Deborah Spell.
Okay. Thank you, Deborah. We need one more person.
Madam Secretary, I have a question. If you are on the nominee, can you still run for office?
Yes.
Okay. And while we're waiting for one other person, I'm about to go through this grid view and pick somebody, since y'all are taking up a whole bunch of time. And while we're doing that, please let people in the meeting. I'm getting texts and calls from people saying they can't get in.
Madam President, I'm not seeing them. I'm watching the waiting room.
Okay, all right, thank you. Now I'm scrolling. I am scrolling, and Maurice Washington. Awesome. We're going to go ahead and add you to the list because you are not an officer or on the executive committee. You don't even have to come off mute. I'm just going to thank you for your service in advance. And
Okay, so, Madam President, I think we reached our bare minimum number where we have 5. We have Damon Gardner, Billy Wilson, Gwen Hicks, Deborah Spell, and Maurice Washington. Thank you guys so much for volunteering.
I move that we close the nominations on the said names.
it's been moved. Can I get a second?
Second.
Stephanie Swan.
Okay, it's been moved by, I think that was Dwayne.
Yes.
To close the nominations
That's correct.
on the said name, seconded by Stephanie Swan. All those in favor of closing the nominations indicate by
Aye.
just raise your hand. That looks good. Who's counting? Okay, great. I'm going to say that was a majority. And then, all right. So, and so since we closed the nominations, Dwayne, we don't need to vote on this slate, or do we still need to vote on this slate?
I think we still need to vote.
Okay. I'd like to entertain a motion to accept the slate of names presented for the nominating committee: Billy Wilson, Damon Gardner, Gwen Hicks, Deborah Spell, and Maurice Washington.
Madam President, I so move.
Can I get a second?
Second, Lisa Staples Wary.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to accept the slate of nominating committee members previously named. All those in favor indicate by raising your hand. If you're an active member, all those opposed indicate by saying nay. All right, the motion carries. Thank you, Madam Secretary, for that report. I am done unless there's any other officer or committee chair that can think of anything pertinent that I left off. Okay, thank you. So at this time, it is 7:01. I'm going to toss the program over to our political action chair, Mr. Damon Gardner, and he is going to get us started with our program tonight. Damon.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm Damon Gordon. I'm the chair of the Political Action Committee. And tonight's theme is voting in the age of COVID-19. And with the onset of the pandemic, there's been some concerns on how we're going to vote and how can you vote safely and what will be the voting procedures and the voting laws so people can vote and still be safe. So tonight we invited several guests. Our main speaker will be Heider Garcia from the Tarrant County Elections Administration to talk about voting procedures for the upcoming 2020 election. And we also invited both co-chairs, Deborah Peoples with the Tarrant County Democratic Party, and we also invited the GOP county chair, but we weren't able to get a response. So the way the meeting will start, we'll have Heider start off with an overview of the voting procedures for Tarrant County, and that will be followed by a Q&A session with a member of our Political Action Committee, and guests will be allowed to either submit questions through chat, and they will be screened by our selection committee, or if you want to verbally ask a question, you can raise your hand and we will call for you to unmute and start your video if you want to ask a question personally. So as of right now, I will start with our first guest, Mr. Heider Garcia. He's the administrator of the Tarrant County Elections. And I believe he's been administrator since 2018 after a bit of a turnover. So I'm gonna have Mr. Garcia go ahead and give us his overview of Tarrant County elections as far as election procedures, and then after that, we will do a Q&A session. Mr. Garcia, you may have the floor.
Thank you. Let me check before we start. Can you hear me well? I wanted to make sure that the audio is clear. Okay, I'm getting head shakes, so I'm that's we're good to go.
Right.
And before you start,
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
For just a second, did we start Facebook, guys?
We haven't started Facebook. I've had some requests.
Okay. So Belinda, Stephanie, I can't
Are you
hear
able to
them.
start? I'm not co-host anymore.
Oh, okay.
I'm working on it right now, trying to find it. I don't see
Okay.
the Jason.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I had to ask because I'm getting text. Okay, we're going to go ahead and let Mr. Garcia begin, and we'll catch up to Facebook. So thank you, Heider, for joining us. Go right ahead.
Oh, absolutely. So anyway, I was saying, first of all, thank you as usual for inviting me, for being here, for giving me the chance to reach out to people and you know, have the opportunity to provide answers and explanations firsthand in an age where everybody's, or at least a big segment of the population, you know, have a concern about misinformation around elections. It's important to have events like these where I can come in, or someone from my office can come in and say, hey, this is how things work. This is what you should expect. And probably most importantly, that rumor is not true. So let's start a little bit with what Damon was talking about, voting procedures. There are a lot of questions about how voting happens in the middle of a pandemic. I think right now, the good side of it, right, is it's not going to be something completely new. We had to face this challenge back in July with the elections from May that were postponed. And I think we came up with a sweet spot, a combination of procedures and instruments to help protect voters at the polling place, while at the same time not overwhelming them with excessive amounts or procedures that, just intimidated them or scared them away from the polling place, right? Or made it impossible to manage. So in essence, what's going to happen is, number one, we're encouraging everyone to wear a mask when you go vote. By law, we cannot mandate that a voter wear a mask to go into a polling place. There's a whole context as to why that is done that way. And I know a lot of people have questions and say, how come you can't ask someone to wear a mask? And the way I summarize it is, look, if you look into the way our laws came to be, we came in with the mindset of, we don't want anyone to arbitrarily decide that you have to do to get to the ballot box, right? And so the mask just falls into that category. We don't want someone saying, well, you can only walk into the polling place if you wear a certain shirt, or if you pass a literacy test, or so we say nothing can get in between a voter and the ballot box. And so if you're 18, a US citizen, and you're not convicted of a felony, you have access to the ballot box, period. No one can tell you that you need to do or meet any other condition. And so that right now, some people seem, to think that it's kind of playing against us in this context of a pandemic, but let's just remember where that comes from, right? So the encouragement is to wear a mask, okay? Respect social distancing. It's not really different than what we are getting used to at this point in our lives when we go shopping, when you go any place. Keep your distance from people. If you can't, make sure you have a mask on. There's plenty of hand sanitizer that we are providing locations. And the idea is that you apply the sanitizer on the way in, do what you need to do, wearing your mask, please, if you can. And then on the way out, after you've interacted with everything there, hand sanitizer again to scrub your hands. We call it scrub in, scrub out, right? Poll workers are going to be wearing face masks. Then we can tell that they must wear face masks. They're our employees and we set the policy for this event. So they're going to be wearing face masks. We're also providing them with latex gloves and face shields. So some people have asked us about the plexiglass screens at the check-in tables. Remember that we don't own the polling locations. We're like a commando operation. We go in, we do the election, we leave the next day. So we can't do large remodeling or anything like that. So what we came up with was, instead, we're going to give the poll workers the face shield. And it's basically like having the plexiglass on them at all times. I think it actually works better because if they have to get up and assist the voter or help someone around the polling place, they're basically carrying the plexiglass, if you will, with them, right? So they'll have the masks, the gloves, and the face shields. And we also have, and I don't have it here, as you can see, I'm at home doing this webinar, but we have a little device that we use to scroll the stylus that you're going to use. So when you check in Tarrant County, you have our poll book. It's no longer a paper poll book, it's an electronic poll book. It's basically an iPad where your record shows up and you sign on it. Okay, so that device, that stylus that you're going to use to sign the poll book is run through a little sponge with alcohol, so it's cleaned right before the voter touches it. The voter can use that same device in the voting machine to make their choices on the screen. Then at the end of it, they just leave it there and it's recycled and cleaned again for the next voters that are next in line. So that worked pretty well. Like I said, back in July when we had the postponed runoff elections and municipal elections, it didn't add any time, it didn't make the experience longer, and it seemed to be effective enough and easy enough to manage for our poll workers, which was our goal. There are lots of questions about what happens if someone who is under quarantine or someone who has been exposed wants to vote. The initial short answer is the same one. No one can tell you that you cannot vote because you're sick or because you've been exposed or because you were in quarantine, okay? So, in fact, the way I explain it to everyone is, if you're wanted for murder, you first have to be allowed to vote and then get arrested. The law is that clear on nothing can get between a voter and a ballot. Okay, so if a voter shows up at a polling place and says, hey, look, I've got symptoms or I've been exposed, we're going to ask them, okay, would you mind doing curbside? Curbside is done outside the polling place. We bring the equipment out. That way we reduce exposure of people inside the polling place. If they refuse, or if they say, no, I want to vote inside, they can't do it. So we'll work with the poll workers and try to, get them the machine, the last one in the corner, try to skip them, move them ahead of the line so that the time of exposure is shorter. And of course, we're going to offer them masks and the whole thing. The poll workers also have wipes with sanitizing solution. So not only in case someone who has been exposed or who is carrying or showing symptoms, but in general terms, we're asking them about every no longer than 30 minutes, wipe down all the equipment and the tabletops and everything in the polling place, right? The other thing that happens is if someone is in quarantine, if they have doctor orders, they fit the category of an emergency ballot. Okay, so if you're in a situation where you have a doctor's orders to remain at home and you cannot leave, there is a form and a process by which we can work with someone who the voter trusts and have the ballot delivered to the voter. And then that person will bring the ballot, fill out. Think about it as an absentee ballot, but instead of being put into the mail system, it's given to someone the voter designates, right? So if I, God forbid, trying to do something on the roof and I fall and the doctor says, you can't get out of your bed, I could designate my wife to go downtown to the elections office with the doctor's signed paperwork saying I can't leave my house. Then the elections office would print a ballot, black ballot, a carrier just like the ones we use for absentee ballot, give it to my wife. She would bring it to me. I would do the voting, put it in the envelope, seal it, and then she would drive it down to the office again. So there's also that procedure if it were to be needed in a case like a doctor's telling you you're quarantined. The only thing to highlight is that process requires a doctor to sign the form saying, yes, this person cannot leave the house. Okay. So we have those curbside, and we have the emergency ballot. Now, there are also a lot of questions about absentee balloting, I guess, how it works and how the process flows. So to be able to request to be eligible for an absentee ballot, according to Texas code, there are 4 categories for being eligible. Number 1 is you're a voter 65 or older. Number 2 is you're going to be out of the county through the entire in-person voting period. That means, for example, because of work, I'm going to leave tomorrow and I'm not coming back until November 30th. Well, I'm going to miss all of early voting and election day, so I'm eligible. And in those cases, when people fill out the form and they say, my reasons, I'm out of county, we need to see an out-of-county address to mail the ballot to. Okay. The third category is having a disability. And the last category is you are in jail, but you have not been convicted yet. So for example, if you are in jail pending an investigation or doing trial, you are eligible for a ballot by mail because you have not been convicted yet. It's just that you can't leave prison, right? So those are the 4 reasons that, according to the code, will make a voter eligible to request and obtain a ballot by mail. Right now, where we're at, and I know that we've been getting a lot of calls about, we want to see sample ballots and we want to find voting locations. The calendar for elections in Texas is pretty compact. Up until last Friday, the 28th, that's right, that was about a week and a half ago, the state didn't publish for us the official list of write-in candidates. And some of the entities that are going to be on the ballot on November 3rd, some of them that were postponed from May, were still sending us names of candidates and language of propositions that are going to be in the ballot. So we actually started just last week putting together the whole ballot design. Okay. Once we finish that, we have to move into what we call public test. So we're going to try to start this Thursday. We're going to be doing the public test. And what we have to do, and this is by law, every county in Texas has to do it, we have to set up every machine that we're going to use in the election with every configuration that's going to be used and cast one of every possible type of ballot, at least one, and cast a vote for every candidate on every ballot there is across the county. So it's a test that takes a long time. We're basically doing the election in a week in our office, running ballots, making sure that, we did 2 votes for John Doe. And so, yes, it tallied 2 for John Doe. Now do 2 for John Doe in the other precinct. Yes, they came out round and so forth. Once we finish all of that, it should be around the end of next week, we're going to post on the website all the sample ballots. Because at that point, we know we didn't make any mistakes putting together, the list of candidates and all of that. And at the same time, I'm going to be in Commissioner's Court a week from today with the list of polling locations that we're proposing and early voting locations. So we take all of that together with the ballots from early voting, and hopefully by a week from Friday, you'll be able to start doing the voter lookup. So you can find your own record on the website and see what's a convenient polling place to go vote and download your own sample ballot. When I have meetings like these, one of the things I tell groups that we can really use help with is we want people to download their sample ballot and know what they're going to find when they go to the voting machine during the election. Keep in mind that there is no straight party voting this year. A lot of people in the past used to come in, just mark their party off, done in a minute. This time you're going to have 25, 30 races and propositions to go through. And so we want to encourage people to visit the website to get that sample ballot ahead of time, to print it, and to take the time to do the research and say, for president, I'm going to vote for this candidate, for U.S. Senate for that candidate. And you can actually bring that piece of paper with you to the polls. You can walk in with that sample ballot and basically just sit there and use it like a cheat sheet. And hopefully if we encourage enough people to do that, what we can achieve is reduce the time you're at the polls and make it a quicker experience for everyone. So that's going to be really important. You're going to see a lot more presence in media and interviews and so in our website saying, hey, sample ballots are ready, locations have been selected, find your record, make sure you're ready to go. And I completely went off topic with the absentees. A person puts it in, right? Let me go back to that. Once we get all of that, that's why they're not ready. That's why we haven't mailed it yet. Okay, we have to go through this process. Once we finish this process, we'll put them in the mail. Those absentee ballots are going to travel to voters through the post office. And obviously they receive them at home. The intent is that a voter at home, all the privacy they need, make their choices, and we provide an envelope to return that ballot. Actually, we provide 2, right? So there's a gray envelope, there's a yellow envelope. The way it works is the voter puts the ballot in a gray envelope that has no name, and then that sealed gray envelope goes inside the yellow one, which is the one where you put on the stamp and it goes to our office and has the voter's name. And the reason that is done is because when the ballots get into our office and we separate them, we don't even see the ballot when we have the envelope that has the voter's name in our hands. So we separate all those gray envelopes without knowing what's inside. We put them all together and mix them, and now without knowing whose ballot is what, we start opening those gray envelopes and extract the ballot. So there's no way we can know how did Heider vote because we never have Heider's ballot together with the envelope that has his name. By the time we're seeing the ballot, we don't know what envelope it came from. Does that make sense? I see the heads again. Okay. So that ballot can return to us 2 ways. Okay. Number 1, mail it back. Okay. With the timeline we designed, right now we have, I think it was almost 45,000 ballot requests in the queue. That's going to keep growing over the next 2 weeks. On September 25th, we're going to put in the mail everything that has been requested up to 4 days before, around the 20th, when we do the cutoff of the list, right? And from there on, we're going to be doing batches as they aggregate. But those ballots that are going to go out on the 25th, even if it takes, maybe 5-7 days to get there, we're still putting them in the hands of voters almost a month before the election, around a month before the election. So say October 1st, October 4th, somewhere around there. So voters who get them that early can fill them out, and if they turn them around really quick, they're mailing them almost 30 days ahead of the election. Those should make it, those should be completely out of the zone of will it make it in time or not, and I know that's been a discussion out there. The other way a voter can return that ballot is they can drive it down to our office, okay? The way the Texas code is written, that was only supposed to happen on election day, okay? Only during election day, a voter can deliver a ballot in person The governor, and I'm sorry about the little warnings here, I just don't know how to make them silent. With the governor's proclamation, because of COVID, voters are allowed to return the ballot in person to our office anytime after they receive it. If you get your ballot on September 30th in the mail, early in the morning, and you want to fill it out and come down at lunchtime and give it to us, you can return your ballot on September 30th. As soon as you get it, there's no limitation. There's some confusion and some people who've said only during early voting. Not true. As soon as you get it, you can drive down and say, here's my ballot, return it. Voters who are going to return the ballot in person to our office need to show ID, okay? A voter can only return their own ballot. So in our case, I can't just bring down my wife's ballot. She has to bring her own, so we would have to go together. I would show ID to return mine. You would show ID to return hers, and so forth. And that's it. That's how the ballot comes back to us. There's also been some question of what happens to the ballot after it comes into our office. So we, the elections office, we don't check the signatures and validate them. There is a group of people that's put together with lists of names provided by the two parties, right? So every year, the Republican Party and Democratic Party give us a list of names, and with those names, we put together what we call the ballot board and the signature verification committee. So it's a two-step process. First step is the signature committee, right? In Tarrant County, we use the same people for the two things, but the concept is the signature committee is a group of at least 6 people. We usually have 12, and they break down in pairs, 1 Republican, 1 Democrat. In fact, in Tarrant County, we actually have some people from the Green and Libertarian Party. So it's 2 people from different parties, and they sit in front of a computer. So we scan all those envelopes that come in, and what the computer does is it puts up for them, all right, here's the signature that is on the ballot, and here's the signature and file for that voter. Are they a match or not? So these 2 people can say, yeah, that's the match, or they can question and say, we're not sure, okay? And that's all about the signature verification committee does. They say yay or not sure. All the yays are open and counted. All the not sure are turned over to the ballot board. And then the ballot board, what they do is they get together, no longer 2 people, but the ballot board as a whole, which in Tarrant County, again, is 12 people, half Republicans, half Democrats, sometimes, half Republicans, Democrats, and 1 or 2 Libertarians and Greens who actually add to the mix. And they vote as a group. So when a ballot is rejected because the signature is not a match, it's not 1 or 2 people that decided it, it's the entire ballot board, half Republicans, half Democrats, and sometimes a little under half, and the Libertarians and Greens that join in. That's a group decision. They literally put it up on a big screen, and they all look at it and go like, okay, how many vote for a match, how many are against it, and then that's the final decision, okay? So ballots that are declared or that they rule as non-match, no signature match, those are never opened. Those envelopes remain sealed, and they go to record storage, and they're untouched. Ballots that were questioned, that they approved, they move on to the same process as the first ones, and then they get opened and extracted and counted. So that's how it works. Some of the other questions I've received have been, and I'm seeing some questions in the chat. I'll get to them when I finish the whole walkthrough of the absentees. How much absentee balloting are we expecting this time? The short answer is a lot. Right now we have, again, if I recall well, about 45,000 requests in the queue. In 2016, just so you have an idea, we had 43,000. So we already have more requests than we did in all of 2016 down to the last day. And we are still at least 2.5 weeks from the day when we're going to mail the first batch. So that in itself is already an indication that we are going to get more requests than in the past. So we took some of the CARES Act funding that we had. We were given basically $2 million. We bought mail sorting equipment for our office. We bought high-speed scanners. We bought faster printers and inserting systems. And we also entered into contract with a certified print shop in case the volume is higher than what we can process in the office. So right now I'm telling you, these first 45, and I think it's going to be way over 50,000 that we're going to mail out on September 25th. We're going to do those through a print shop, a certified ballot print shop, certified by the Texas Secretary of State, that will do the bulk for us. So we don't that was designed that way so that we wouldn't say, oh my God, we couldn't mail them in time. It was too much for us. Our infrastructure wasn't enough. We paired up and we found a partner to make sure that wasn't an obstacle. And so what we'll see happening over, after the 25th is maybe every day or two, we'll say, okay, we have 3,000, we can handle it. We got 10,000, we'll give it to the print shop. So we'll be doing that analysis of what's coming in and how many ballots are being requested on a day-by-day basis. And by the same token, if we mail out more, we expect to receive more. We got additional ballot scanners and ballot board stations, basically to say we need to be able to process more ballots in the same amount of time. One thing that that has been talked about out there, and I want to make sure that everybody understands, is we don't get to say, oh, we're not going to be ready on the deadline because too many people voted. The way that the Texas Elections Code is written, we have to certify the number of days after the election that we have to do it, period. And it's up to us to figure out whether we need more machines, 24-hour shifts, more people. Code says you've got to get it done by this day, period. So that's what we've done. We've gotten enough resources to say what happens if we get, this huge influx of absentee ballots and all. So on the volume, we're good, and we're good even without 24-hour shifts, right? That's always the last resort. So we're talking 8-hour shifts. We should be able to at least process at least 3 times what we did in 2016. Which means that if it came to it, if it was 6 times, we'd go in double shifts of 8 hours and then eventually 24 hours. So we have enough room to grow, and we've gotten enough resources to grow and deal with that. So that's a little bit of how it works. And I think, Damon, if you're okay, maybe we can start doing some of the questions, because I can go on for hours here.
Hi, yes, we can. This is Stephanie Swan. I'll be fielding the questions for you.
Okay, I'm sorry, Stephanie.
Oh, there's no worries, no worries. We're trying to balance the weight of this. And thank you so much. You've given us some tremendous information already. We do have a few points of clarification. The first one we'll start with is, do we have an idea of how many polling places will be available inside the city of Arlington, or is that still being worked out?
So I don't have a number off the top of my head, but what I can tell you is, remember that we went to vote centers in 2019. And that was that modality where you can vote anywhere on election day. And one of the fundamental aspects of that decision, the court was very clear with me, do not reduce polling places. And so our goal was, we started with the same list of places that we had in 2019, that November election a year ago. If it changed, it might have been one more, one less if church wasn't available and we had to move somewhere nearby that maybe crossed city limits. And I'm sorry that I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it's roughly the same number of places, if not the same, and the same places that we did in 2019.
So, and we can also, I believe it was that we can vote anywhere within our county. Is that still true?
That is correct. You can vote anywhere in the county. Anywhere in the county. So if you work in Southwest Fort Worth or up in Grapevine and you see a sign that says vote here, walk in. You can vote there even if you're not within the boundaries of the city of Arlington. And you're going to get the Arlington city ballot. That's the this whole thing.
Okay, very good. Okay, another question that came out, and I believe you talked about this a little bit, but so we're still waiting on the sample ballot. Are we looking to get that, in the next couple of weeks? Do we know?
Yes, like I said, we're in the process of testing. If we post something right now, we risk saying, oops, we forgot a name or we misspelled something, or, we even got a translation corrected this morning. So that's why we're holding back until we can. And what I want people to understand is, we didn't get that information. Some of that information we got actually this morning, a correction of some of the text. So we're through that process of, generating proof, sending it back to the parties and the entities, getting them to sign off, find their corrections and so forth. That's why they're not available right now.
Okay. And of course because we're taking straight party voting off the ballot, it seems like, some of the things that, the propositions and things like that come towards the end, that will be rolled to the end of the ballot. People won't, if they stop at the president and say, okay, I'm good there, and they don't want to go any farther, then of course that's their prerogative. But I might suggest for future that if this is the way we're going to do it, then maybe the president needs to be at the end of the ballot and the smaller things need to be at the front of the ballot. So to make sure people at least pass through them before they just skip on to the president.
Yeah, that is actually set by the elections code. That requires a legislative change. The code is specific as to what order and what the precedence is on the races on the ballot. So there's very little leeway there. I mean, usually it's maybe the cities, the order in which they file or something, but not really. You can't really choose to say, I'm going to put an ISD before the president. That's
I get it. I just an idea, because, you know,
no, and it's a good one, but it's the kind of thing that I want people to understand. You need to call your state rep and talk to them, because that's out of our hands.
Okay, very good. Now, regarding the voting machines, you mentioned the stylus that's going to be sterilized in between voters. You use it to sign in, and I'm assuming you take that same stylus with you to your little booth. Is that how that works?
Yep.
Okay, so is there going to be any sterilization of that booth in between people, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we got this little device, and I am so sorry I don't have one with me at home, but it basically looks like a little square like this, different color, and it has an opening on each end. And inside of it, there's a sponge soaked in an alcohol disinfecting solution. And what you do is, and I'm going to try to create an illusion here, right, is basically you slide it in one way, and the voter pulls it out the other way, covered in alcohol. And so they use it. When they're done, they put it in a bucket. And so for the next voter, we grab it and we goes in again. So it's cleaned. It's like basically doing every time when someone's going to grab it, cleaning it. But instead of giving the poll worker a rag and say, you know, spray it with alcohol, all they have to do is just slide it through and it comes out clean and disinfected for the next person.
Okay, very good. Now, some people are wondering if it's possible for an organization or a group to help set up or help work at the polls.
Absolutely. I'm not shy to say this. We'll take all the help we can get. The easiest way is either call the Office of Elections, 817-831-8683. Go to elections.tarrantcounty.com and you'll find the contact information there. Or you can send us an email at electionday@tarrantcounty.com. Basically, all we need is, hey, my name's Heider Garcia. Here's my email or my phone number. Call me because I want to help you. And believe me, someone will call you. Don't be shy. We'll call you and we'll say, all right, let's find a place for you to help us. That's basically for poll workers. If you are, we also use a temporary agency to fill in temporary positions that we create in our office. People who help us deliver equipment, technicians who help us provide service, phone bank staff, early voting clerks who help us process all these forms and all these envelopes that we're talking about. You can also email us with that. Just it'll take a different path because we have to go through the temporary agency and so forth.
Okay, very good, very good. All right, now regarding the validation of signatures for those mail-in or those paper ballots that are brought into the office there, what happens if someone's ballot is rejected because they it was voted by the board, the signatures don't match? Is that voter actually notified, or what happens there?
Right. So a ballot, there are two things, and we do, the board sends notifications. They usually do it at the end of the process. Once the election's over and certified, they send all the rejection letters. We call them rejection letters to the voters, notifying them your ballot was not counted and here's what happened with it. The immediate question I get is, why don't they send them the minute they do? They could, but they're in the middle of it. And probably the most important part of the answer is the code doesn't allow for any kind of remediation of that. Once the ballot board makes a decision, it's final.
Okay, so they can't contest that, in other words.
Nope, there's no way to contest that in the code.
They can't request another, or what if, okay, if that ballot was rejected, can that person then go to a poll in person and vote?
No, it's considered a cast ballot. So that's the way it's written in the code. Once the mail ballot is in, it's considered received. The moment the ballot comes into our office and it's scanned and it's in, it's considered this was a cast ballot. That's it. And then whatever happens after that is not seen in the code as a, well, if it doesn't count, then you can still go back out. The code sees it as it's final. It was sent in. So So that's an important point of discussion for next year's legislative session.
Right, right. Okay, so I think I've come to most of the questions. I haven't seen anything new come into the chat. There's one young lady mentioned that she did not get to take that stylus. The first stylus she got when she signed in, she didn't take that to the booth, and I'm assuming there's a redesign there or something.
So if it was in March, it makes sense. In March we didn't have the pandemic and we weren't doing all of this. If it was in July, then yeah, it was a mistake. You should have been allowed to take it to the booth and then put it in the end. So if you want to drop us an email or put it in the chat where you went to, and we can just make sure we tap into the early voting clerk in case they're there again and say, hey, remember you're supposed to let them use it.
Right, right. Okay. So she's
July. Okay, then we'll look into that. I got the name here on the.
And I think because of the magnitude of this particular election, and we are expecting huge crowds, I think that, you know, the faster we can work out those types of little problems would be best.
Yeah, and this was new for everyone. I'm not gonna lie to you. There were, you know, there's probably more than one situation where someone might have not followed exactly down to the rule or something, but like, I know that we had to call some people and say, hey, are you guys wiping your machines every 30 minutes? And, you know, you have that awkward 2-second pause on the phone like, yeah, okay, remember to keep doing it then. So, you know, something to really highlight and reiterate, you know, all these protocols because they're new. We've had people who've been doing this. That's the other thing you fight when you have these sudden changes. People who've been doing this for 10 years. Remember to do something different, right? It's a different protocol, and so their instinct is to follow the old protocol. So, but another location, we'll find out who that is and make sure we reiterate it.
Will there be a bigger campaign to try to get people to vote early? Will there be a bigger push for that?
Absolutely. I mean, the way I see it is, why would you wait for election day when there might be a line? And it's not just a line or the context of COVID, right? Why would you wait till the last possible day to cash a lottery ticket? Don't do it as soon as you can. Something goes wrong on day one, then you go the next day and try again. I mean, if you say, I'm going to go the first Monday of early voting, and you get sick or your car breaks down, you have another 3 weeks to try again. But if you wait until election day and your car breaks down, that's it, game over. So just that, you know, not risking it, and even COVID, no COVID, just out of making sure that you will have a chance to get there. If life happens, do it early. I have a question here that I really like, and I think we should address it. It says, if a person's signature is no longer the same due to health or age or a stroke, is a doctor's statement required? So 2 things. When the signature is compared, the first thing the system shows is the application the person put in. And in Texas, the applications expire every year. So that signature shouldn't be, you know, more than what, if it was put January 1st, 10 months old, 11 months old, okay? So age is usually not the factor there, but you have conditions like they say a stroke or something. If you drop, the code also allows for us to look at, or the ballot board to look at any signature the voter has made in the last 6 years. And so for people who vote in, who drop off the ballot in person, one of the steps you have to do after showing ID when you drop off the ballot in person is sign a roster. And because you're signing a document that is within this last 6 years, that document can be used by the ballot board to say, yeah, that looks like that one. So that's another way to combat that. Hey, I know that my signature has changed because whatever issue. So I'm going to deliver in person, and that way I give you a fresh signature like the one I just made on the envelope, and that the board can use it. Option number 3 is you can use a witness to sign your envelope, and the documentation is there on the envelope on the outside. And so basically, if I can't use my hands, if I burn them and I have a cast, I can tell my wife, make a mark on it and use the witness portion, and the witness has to write her name and some information, but basically she can attest and say, I'm witnessing that Heider cannot sign his envelope. Okay, so you can use that resource and say, yes, someone else is telling me, of course it's not gonna match, but now there's a witness that is saying, yes, this person won't be able to sign this ballot, and I'm the one who's witnessing that you know, attesting to that. So that's another resource available there.
Okay, what we're gonna do is switch over to Deborah
Stephanie, can I ask
Spell.
a question? Stephanie, this is Shirley Adams. Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Yeah. Hi, this is Shirley Adams. How are you?
Hi, Shirley. How you doing?
All right. The comment I have, my husband, we voted first time mail-in ballot and the runoff, and his signature, I didn't know the seal, the yellow envelope, and then you sign it. His was rejected, but it was returned in time for us to make the correction. And I don't know, I didn't understand what the timeline was with this. If it goes out soon as y'all can, the person has an opportunity to submit the new ballot. And I sealed it. Before that, he signed it, and then I sealed it. And the signature was not totally visible, but his signature, I thought it hadn't changed appreciably. But I think that would be a good thing to tell people to fill it, then sign it, because I think his signature, part of it may have been hidden under the seal, under the envelope seal. And so that was a point. That was our first time, and that's something we learned. The second comment I want to make, is that most people have a forever stamp, and that's all I'm hoping it doesn't cost any more than that, so they don't come back for insufficient postage, because most senior citizens are not going to go to the internet and find out the postage is higher. They're not going to go to the post office and stand in line. That defeats the purpose of that's the COVID exposure. But that puts them out for different exposure to the elements out and possibly COVID. So I'm hoping that the stamp, the cost of postage to return it, my phone is ringing, doesn't cost any more than the forever stamp. And that's all my comments. Thank you, Stephanie.
No, and they're great. Sure.
You,
I'll reach out to you tomorrow to understand the exact. I'll look up the details of your husband's ballot exactly, because determinations by the ballot board are not reversible. Okay, so I'm not sure if I understood. It couldn't have been rejected and corrected. That's not part of the way the code works, but we'll look into that tomorrow. If your ballot gets returned to you by the post office, it's like undeliverable, and for some reason you try to mail it to us and it shows up in your ballot box again. Yeah, you can cancel it. We've never seen it, so you could cancel it and request another one. So I'd like to look into that. I'll look into it tomorrow to know exactly what you're referring to.
Okay, thank you.
And what was
Heider, this is Deborah, and I'm going to ask you, can you quantify for the folks, because I think it's scaring people to death, how can you tell us how many ballots we ultimately ended up rejecting in July?
It was something like 54 out of 21,000.
Thank you. So
it's not,
I know if you're one of those 54, it still bothers you, but I want you to understand that the whole idea of vote by mail, and I'm only going to speak to Tarrant County. I can't speak to the rest of the 253 counties, but your ballot is in good hands. Out of 21,000 absentee ballots, we rejected 54. So I know if you're one that 54, that sounds terrible, but I want you to think about 54 out of 21,000. Those committees, and let me tell you, they work together well. Emma Allen, for those of you who know her, headed our ballot board for years. It is now Catherine Cano who heads our ballot board. Emma had about 12 people. Cat expanded into about 25. They work well with the Republican judge, believe it or not. They actually get along and they get in there, and their goal is to try not to kick out ballots. They only do it if they just cannot, they try everything they can to say it's a match. And so if they get to the point that it's not a match, it is done with both parties and the Green and Libertarian Party. So I don't want anybody to think that this is a huge problem in Tarrant County. Yes, we want it to be zero, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not enough to scare you to not go vote by mail.
And I usually don't share the number because I don't want people, those 54, to think that we're saying, well, okay, whatever, you're expendable, right? But
no,
the odds are really small. and it's small things, right? I mean, you're signing, like someone said recently on a paper column, it's not a Christmas card for your friend. It's your vote. Take it seriously and sign it. Don't use a Sharpie. Don't use, a pencil. Sign it like you're signing a mortgage, and your signature is going to be close and it's going to be good. Now, if you just scribble on it, you're putting the ballot board in a tough position because they have to make sure they match, and they have penalties. The way the code is written, the ballot board has legal consequences if they knowingly approve a signature that doesn't match, but they don't have penalties if they reject something that doesn't match. So, they're in a crunch, and they have to really be able to picture themselves standing in front of a judge and saying, I will stand by that vote that we took. So, do the same thing as a voter and take your time to sign it. And then everything should be fine. You shouldn't be one of the 54. And the other thing that Shirley mentioned, I know, Alisa, you're looking, we're out of time, but one more thing.
No, we're good. We have a ton of questions, so
okay.
We hope you stay till 10 o'clock. That was a joke.
Oh, I'm good with that. I'm home.
No, you can stay till 10, really.
The postage. Now that we're finishing the ballots, we know, I can tell you right now, this, like, I didn't have this last week, Deborah, when we did the other town hall. Some locations, some precincts are going to have 2 sheets. Okay, so some voters are going to get a single, I don't say page, to me, this is 1 page and 2 pages, right? So some people are going to get 1 sheet front and back. Some people are going to get 2 sheets, front, back, front. And so that is what can cause an increase in postage and the forever stamp not being enough. So give us this week to finish the testing, the printing. We actually take packets to the post office and weigh them and make sure we know. Our website, and we'll probably be doing announcements, we usually say people in, so for example, if it were Arlington, that's going to have 2 pages, you're going to see something on our website say, Arlington voters, you need extra postage. And there'll be a description of what, but we don't know that until we have that. So that's why we don't have that answer yet. But when we do, it'll be on the website.
Okay.
Heider,
Thank
one more
you.
thing
So,
before you go.
Hang on, Damon. Hang on.
Okay.
Hang on just a second. I want to toss it over to Deborah Spell. A laundry list of questions, and Heider has probably hit most of them. But Deborah, if you want to kind of make sure that those questions have been touched.
Okay, I'm ready.
For everybody else, keep putting your questions in the chat, please.
Okay. Hi, Heider.
How you doing, Deborah?
I'm good. Let's see. I don't think you've answered this question yet. Is there tracking for the ballots, for the mail-in ballots?
No. We actually went out for a bid. We wanted to use the CARES Act money, but the bid failed. We only got 1 proposal, and it was this vendor that doesn't do ballot tracking, but was trying to improvise something, and so I threw it off and said no. We're working with our IT department to see if we can have sort of a substitute, but that's still in the works. I'm very optimistic, so keep an eye on the website, because if that ends up working out, then there'll at least be a way for you to ask the website, hey, is my ballot in yet? And did it get approved or not?
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay. What about if a person decides to vote in person instead of mailing in the ballot? What is the procedures that they need to follow?
So if you get a mail ballot, great question. If you have a mail ballot and you receive it, you're still eligible to vote in person. Okay. If you have a ballot with you, bring it to the polling place, and when they look you up in the electronic poll book, it's going to say, we gave Heider a ballot. Do you have it with you? And so you just you do a surrender. You just hand over the ballot to the poll worker. They'll enter that into the poll book, and then you're good to go as if you'd never gotten a ballot, right? The process is designed so that we can cancel the absentee ballot before you do a vote in person to close the window of possibility for voting. If you don't have it, no problem. It's just going to take a little bit longer because the poll worker is going to call our office and is going to ask us to cancel the ballot, to look up the electronic record and find a ballot and cancel it before you're told to go ahead and vote. Ultimately, you're always going to be allowed to vote. Okay, we've had cases where a poll worker can't get a hold of us or something happens. Look, does it open the window of possibility for someone to vote twice? Could be, theoretically, but you're voting twice, signing, leaving a record. Well, you're going to get a call from DA. So, you know, there's a process to close that window, but it's not going to get in the way of voting if you want to.
Yeah, but as far as if you don't, what we need to get out to people is if you change your mind, it is very important to take that ballot to the polling location, because
the easiest way.
It's going to be very busy.
Yep.
And it's going to be very hard to get in touch with the elections administrator person, more than likely.
Yeah, and it's about being thoughtful to the other people in line, right? If something
Right.
seconds, why would you make it take 10 and keep them 10 minutes waiting? Right. So yeah, it's about helping your own.
And then if they cannot get in touch with the election person, the only option for them to vote is a provisional ballot. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Right. And a provisional ballot is not counted.
Well, let's go into that. That's a good one. Provisional ballots are counted, right? So every ballot from a voter from a voter that is eligible to vote is counted. And that's a myth we need to get off the table. People are worried and say, well, provisional ballots, they don't count. Or absentee ballots that come in late, they don't count. They do. If they didn't, I would go home and sleep for 3 days after the election, and I don't. I get to hang on there for another 2 weeks. So provisional ballots, basically, a voter is in a situation where we say, we're not sure, it looks like you shouldn't be voting. But coming from someone who has been through a lot of elections in a lot of places, one of the beautiful things of elections in the US is provisional ballots. Because it's empowering you as a voter to say, you might be wrong, elections administrator of Tarrant County, and I do want to vote. And so the provisional is giving the voter the benefit of the doubt. Now, what happens after that is that envelope comes back to the office and it's researched. And if we find out, oh my God, Heider did go to DPS and we're seeing the form, that ballot gets counted and put into the final results. Your vote gets counted like every other ballot. So it's giving voters the possibility of saying, no, you will not deny me, and you will take an extra step to research. I've done elections in other places in the world where if you're not in the poll book, too bad, still sad, come back in 4 years.
Now, I understand that step that you can go within, I think it's 4 or 5 days that you can go back and take confirming information to say that, yes, I am eligible to vote.
So,
is that correct?
So it depends, right? So there are different kinds of provisionals. The only one that can be cured, okay, that requires you to come into the office to do something is...
Explain cured.
I don't have an ID on me, right?
Okay.
So, look, I'm Heider. Well, yeah, but where's your ID? I don't have it on me. It's a provisional.
Mm-hmm.
The only way to fix that is you have to come to our office and show us the ID. That's what's called curing.
Okay.
If you say, look, I'm Heider, here's my ID, and you don't show up in a poll book, basically the research there doesn't need the voter to come into the office, because what we're going to do is we're going to go back on our records, on a poll book, on the DPS records, on everything we can, on the Secretary of State's database, and see if we find proof you did register. And if you did register in time, then we're going to count it. Or, things like that. So the research that's done on our own, the only case that requires someone to come in is you didn't have an ID on election day, so we need you to come in and show us the ID before you can count it, because otherwise everything looks good. Provisionals are counted, and that's important. And so are ballots that come in late, right? Absentee ballots can arrive, put them in the mail by election day, and they get to our office, in this case, on Wednesday the 4th, and you're good, they will be counted and they will be added to the count in the following.
As long as they are postmarked.
Well, if they're postmarked by election day, right?
Yes, right.
If somehow you put it on the mail on November 3rd and we got it in the mail on November 4th, it will count.
Right.
It won't count.
Except for out of state and out of the U.S., out of the country.
Overseas voters. That's
right. Now, okay. Now take okay. I'm sure you're familiar of the case of
No,
I'm
not
sure
you.
you're
I got a
familiar
little
with the
guess
case
here.
of Crystal Mason, who voted with a provisional ballot,
Mhm.
but it didn't count against her. It wasn't voted. Okay. But she was still charged. So that's why I'm saying that a provisional ballot doesn't count. So can you explain that?
So they were, my understanding of the case, and that case was kind of unfolding when I came in, but what my understanding is, it was not a conviction for voting twice, but for signing the affidavit attesting to something that a condition that wasn't met.
Well, it was because she was still on probation.
Correct. And basically the oath on the provisional says, I know that I'm eligible, that I'm not in the case
She
of.
didn't know. She didn't know. She didn't know.
Right. But again,
Okay. I'm just saying.
Kind of the case, and what the oath says that you sign, the oath explicitly says, I know that I'm not on probation and I'm eligible. And I understand that's the route the judge took to say, here's what I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not there had been double voting. Okay. So that's two separate things. That vote was never counted. That
Right.
was never opened.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't eligible to vote.
Okay.
So that's a separate case. The other thing that I wanted to highlight in line with the whole do ballots count or not? Some people say, I'm eligible to vote by mail, but I'm not going to vote by mail because those get counted after the election. It's actually not true.
Right.
You're actually the first to get counted.
Right.
When you are at home on November 3rd and you start, refreshing the website 700, the first thing you're going to see is every absentee that we have received and every ballot that was cast during early voting.
Mm-hmm.
It happened on election day. We add through the night as those machines and those ballots come back. So in fact, absentees and early voters get counted and posted before election day. Except for, of course, absentees that arrive, that evening, and the last pickup of the mail, we do another sweep at the post office at 5:30 or 6. And, that doesn't make it to the 7 p.m. cut, but it does make it through the night. And any ballots that we get the next day or any overseas ballots, those do get added. But most people, if you vote absentee and you vote early, yours gets counted ahead of election day polling, or at least added to the public count before election day polling place.
Okay. What about expired license?
You can use an expired ID up to 4 years. If you have an expired passport 2 years old, you can use it. Military card, any ID up to 4 years old. Licenses, if you have an out-of-state license, that's valid. It's a type Class B ID, and you're going to be asked to sign an additional form. But you can use that too. So some college students or people who are new to the state, and they say, I have my North Carolina license. Good.
And what about address match?
What?
The address,
No, the address doesn't have to match. The saying we have is the role of the ID is just to make sure that you look like you, not to know where you live.
Okay.
Address is the one in registration.
Okay.
That's why the out-of-state license will work, because it's a government ID and it has your picture.
Okay. Okay.
Hey, may I ask a quick question, Deb, for just a second, along driver's license? So this whole thing with the star, your driver's license has to have that unique star or watermark on it. That seems to be like a really big deal. I mean, it's been publicized as a huge deal, and people are worried about that. And also, are we still going to be scanning driver's license? I think some of the newer ones may have had some problems.
Yeah. So maybe they're related, maybe not. I don't know. But number one, it doesn't have to be a real ID. That's for airports and other issues, and other functions. Any license that you have, again, even if it's expired up to 4 years old, and if you're over 70, if I recall well, it can be 10 years expired. Doesn't matter. There's after a certain age, and I believe it's 70, if my memory serves well. It doesn't matter how long ago the ID expired. It's your ID. You can use it.
Right. Right.
So for the driver's license, it doesn't have to be a real ID. I believe that's the name of the Gold Star thing that the Texas driver's license is doing. That's for other purposes. And then the scanning, one of the features the electronic poll book has is that it can scan the barcode on the back, but that's all that does is save the time to type it in. And we have the statistics. When someone's checked in, scanning the ID, it takes about 30 seconds to check them in. When they have to type the name, it takes about a minute 20. So it almost triples the time. So the more we can scan, the quicker the line will move. I know that in March and July, we had some people, they would try to scan and it wouldn't scan, and then they had to type it in. Apparently, our vendor found an issue with the barcode format they weren't supporting, and theoretically, they've corrected it. So we had something like an 85% rate of driver's license scanning, and the other 15, when it was a driver's license search, was manual. What we expect to see is something like a 95, 98% scan. So keep the lines moving faster.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, when you spoke about safety, and now are the election workers, are they required to wear the mask and gloves? They are required, but
yes, our policy is gonna be to require them to wear the mask.
Mm-hmm.
They are interacting with each other, interacting with the voter within 6 feet of someone.
Okay.
I know some places, at 11 a.m. they have low turnout or no one's there. If they step aside to a corner of the room, they take the mask off to catch their breath and some fresh air. That's fine. The minute someone walks into the room, a voter, mask on again to interact with someone.
Mm-hmm. And gloves? Or
they have the gloves. The gloves are going to be optional for them.
Optional, but
about how they want to protect themselves.
Okay.
Gloves have a different rhythm to it, because if you never change them in a day, what you're doing is you're holding the germs and passing them on and on and on and on. The key, when people use gloves, they tend not to use sanitizer. Sanitizer.
Yeah, okay.
Counter-instinctive, right? So I prefer to tell them, don't put on the gloves and put sanitizer on every 15, 20 minutes.
Okay. Okay, good. Now, I have a question about inmates. How do inmates receive ballots?
They can apply for a ballot by mail. I confess that I've never been to a prison or operated one. I guess that's good now that I'm saying it. So I don't know exactly how the mail process works in the jail, but basically they have to mail us the form and we mail them the ballot.
Deborah Peoples, Madam Chair, is that a question you can help with?
Is it the role of the party chairs to?
No, Deborah, it's not.
Okay.
It is if we know that they're inmates, and we do help them request ballots, but we have no way of knowing what the jail population is or the status of that inmate. And so it is really up to the inmate. If somebody calls us and says, my son's in jail and that has happened, and we want them to get an application, we have had people take them down to the jail to get them to the inmate, but we don't know the status. Just like we don't know the status of students, of parents who have students out of state. We are dependent on the individual to let us know.
Okay.
Is that, I have a question. Is that like an outreach effort organizations could undertake? For example, the NAACP or sorority or fraternity or church or something, to maybe work with whoever operates the jail, the city jail, the county jail?
Yeah. Listen, I think that would be wonderful. Also, we've had some jail chaplains who've given us, and there are many ministers who serve as jail chaplains, and they've given us information. And so I think that would be a great outreach effort.
Okay, and while you're speaking, Madam Chair, can we go back to the Crystal Mason case, so that everybody, including myself, understands?
Okay.
So she was ineligible to vote because she was on parole or probation.
So let me talk to you all, because I am very much supportive of Crystal Mason. I personally, and Heider can't address this, but I personally feel like it was voter entrapment. When she went to vote, the judge knew that she was on probation. She
Election
never
judge.
should have been offered a provisional ballot. The
Thank you.
judge knew the woman was on probation. He then turned it over to the DA. It was not turned over by the elections administrator. It was turned over by that judge, who was a Republican judge who knew that she was on probation. She said she did not understand that she could not vote, and they offered her a provisional ballot. This is not something that Heider can answer. This is very political. But for me, this is nothing but Republican politics. There have been Republicans. We had a Republican who falsified his filing data, and he was allowed to resign and put on probation. So I don't want anybody, I want you all to understand that voter suppression is very real. That is not, and so Crystal Mason's case now, and for those of you who didn't know, Monday I was at a rally, or we are asking Abbott to pardon her. He pardoned Shelley Luther for the pandemic. We're asking him to pardon Crystal Mason, but this was not a Heider decision. This was that individual sent it to the DA.
And this was a DA's decision.
Yeah.
Huh?
This was the election judge and the judge. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, this was the district attorney's.
Yeah, the district attorney, Sharon Wilson, had to make a decision to prosecute it. And so, but I don't want you all to get confused, because this is, for me, this is something that's separate and apart. What you invited Heider on tonight, and I am going to talk about that, is to talk about the process for voting during a pandemic and did we make it safe. The Crystal Mason case, I think, is a civil rights case and a real case of voter suppression.
Yeah.
But I don't want people, and so a lot of what you've been talking about tonight, and it's sort of like the 54 people. If you're one of the 54 people whose ballot got rejected, then you feel like it's by itself. We have a bigger problem than Crystal Mason, because we have Republicans telling our young men, African-American men, that if they've been convicted of a felony, they can't vote. Not true. If they are off paper, if they have been convicted and served their sentence and they're off paper, they can register to vote. So we have so much misinformation going around, and to me, that's voter suppression.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
so
what I wanted to say, and I want to be very clear, Heider Garcia has my utmost respect. I think, and I have worked now with 3-4 different election administrators. I get more straight answers and more commitment and more work together with Heider than anybody else. Our issue, and you all need to understand this and walk away from this call very clear. The voting process is like 99% smooth. You're always going to have hiccups. We had in March, it was the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. We didn't have enough machines in many places. That has been fixed for November. The key is not to scare people and tell them there are all these things that are wrong with voting. The key is to get people to go out in droves and vote. I am recommending that people vote by mail. Don't sit on your ballot till the last minute to return it. Get that ballot. He said they're going out on September the 25th. When you get that ballot, don't sit on it and wait, say, I'll get to it 2 weeks later. Fill out that ballot and send it back. Then the post office, there's no excuse. It's not going to take them 30 days to get your ballot there if you send it out. The thing about absentee voting, yes, there were ballots that were rejected, and I know, Shirley, I can think of what you're talking about, because some people have signed it, then seal it, and then when they try to lift up the flap, it's hard to see. But I will tell you, and Heider will tell you, Kat and that ballot board fought, and there were people who signed it, and if they could get that flap up enough to figure out that signature, they accepted them. So I don't want people to be afraid to vote by mail. Okay, we reject, out of 21,000, we did not take 54, and the ballot board is getting better and better every time, and their goal is to reject 0. For those people who want to go vote in person, vote early. Don't wait till election day. If you wait till election day, there will be lines, but you got 3 weeks that you can go and vote in a very safe environment. For example, I vote by mail, but this time I'm going to go vote in person, where as soon as I get my ballot on the first day of early voting, I'm going to go turn it in, because I want to understand the experience that many voters are going through. But don't wait until you got 3 weeks plus election day. So we need to be right now, the NAACP's job should be telling our people to go vote in droves.
Correct. Let me ask you this, Madam Chair, with regard to the post office, if you get your ballot whenever they go out and you drop it in the mail, I think it'll get there in 4 weeks. But
yeah,
our concerns about the postal service and what the president is doing. So do people have a right to be a little suspicious? And they do, I think, but I think if you get your ballot by mail, go ahead and mail it, or go ahead and take it in. What we doing? Go ahead.
So, Madam President, I have talked to many postal workers, and they're committed to getting those ballots there. They are very upset about what's happening with the postal service, and so those postal carriers are committing to get it there. But if you wait until the weekend before the election, I'm going to tell you to get in your car and drive it up and drop it off. I mean,
right.
The closer you get to the election, that's when we run into problems. But mail delivery is still happening now, and I think for people who want to vote by mail, it should be relatively painless. But the closer we get to the election, the more then we'll start worrying about telling people to go drop them off.
And then I just want to confirm, there is no such thing as drop-off boxes. You have got to take your ballot.
No, and Heider, can you explain? We just had a meeting on this last week, and Heider, can you walk us through why we only have that one location for drop-off?
Yeah, so, thanks. No, just, I mean, and I understand the conversation and the context of what we're saying, but just, obviously from an institutional point, I want to make sure that when I'm sharing a stage with Deborah and she's expressing, voter suppression is real and you have those issues, that you also hear from the elections office. We're working our butts off to make sure that you have a fair run process that does exactly what the law says, because that's all we can do, right? And like I said, I'm not shying away from a conversation, which is not today, about the Crystal Mason case. But that was a decision on the judicial branch,
Yes, we understand.
Just run the process and keep the records. No, I just, because I understand the passion, but I don't want anybody to see the video and then say like, wow, there was no comment following that. So just make sure, that's separated, right? The elections office from that judicial process that followed. Okay, drop boxes. Drop boxes, they're not allowed in Texas. For 2 reasons. The code doesn't say you can't have drop boxes, but the code says you have to check ID when you return it. So if you have a drop box, no one would be checking ID. And the code says you have to return it at the office of the early voting clerk. And in a county like ours, where you have an elections administrator who is designated by the code as the early voting clerk, then that means they can only be returned at our office. So again, that's more food for thoughts for the upcoming legislative session. Do we want to see now? I do know that I would expect that this COVID experience and this proclamation from the governor opening up at least a period of time for the returning would serve as testing grounds for, hey, maybe there are other things that we need to consider in this process, right? I think this is going to be, in the end, very successful, allowing people to just get in their car and drop it off when they're passing by. Not for us, it's, we got to figure out how to design the whole drive-through experience to make it convenient, and because we're going to have in our warehouse, people dropping off ballots, people voting early, and trucks from our staff coming in and out to deliver equipment. So we're trying to figure out how to make sure we're not going to run over any voters that are trying to enter our facility. But, once we figure it out, I think it's going to be a very convenient thing for voters to be able to just, roll down the window, name, signed, we got it, keep going. Your ballot is now secure. It's not going to get lost or arrive late.
So thank you, because Elisa, we had Heider came on last week for us to discuss this whole issue of vote by mail, and Shirley Adams brought up at that time, and she's right about the postage. So we're going to be waiting with bated breath to hear about the postage on the ballot, and as soon as we know something, we'll start getting it out to people.
Yeah.
Okay.
The key, again, to repeat it just for people to understand, the process in Texas is very compact. It allows entities and candidates to get on the ballot to a time that is very close to the elections. Again, just last week we were getting data. So we're doing it as fast as we can to get you those sample ballots, list of places, and the whole thing.
How many which election will this be for vote centers, having vote centers? Is this the third or
the fourth?
Will this be
the first one was November of last year, then we did March, then we did July. This is going to be the fourth, and a year after implementing it. And
okay.
While Deborah was talking, I was looking up, it's around 60 locations that Arlington's going to have, if I did my counting correctly on that spreadsheet.
60. 60.
I think I had 62 on the list of 2019, so it should be around there.
Okay, so 60 voting locations, vote centers.
In the city of Arlington.
In the city of Arlington. I remember the first 2 times election, those come to my mind. Lines out the door, process is slow.
Now remember, Elisa, that was the primary. And so I want you to go back to the primary. In the primary, we have always, Republicans and Democrats always have a separate primary. So we miscalculated on the number of machines. So that is why you saw long lines. In the general election, we all share machines. So if there's a backup, it just means that before, let's say in the primary, maybe the Republicans had 12 machines based on their past voting patterns, and we only had 4. So it backed up. Now all 20 machines will be dedicated to any voter that comes in. So it should go a lot. Now, I'm not telling you that there won't be lines, but what I'm saying is that the wait should be shorter. Also, if people go with this extra week of early voting, we are hoping that takes some of the pressure off on election day voting.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
That's getting to. I wanted you to explain primary versus election day, because there was discussion about just what you said. Why, the general public does not understand why the Republicans have more machines, or why this polling place has more machines than the other one. There's a question in the chat right now about how many voting stations will be at the Mansfield Courthouse. And so what you're saying is that's based on
yes. So we look at past history. And let's say that in your box, Republicans outvote Democrats 2-1. Well, historically, that's what they did. So based on historical data, and then we throw in some data from what we think this cycle will be, we decide on a number of machines. And so we say, okay, Republicans need more machines than Democrats in this box, because that's what's been historical. Well, we blew the historical data out the water this time. Okay, we had a contested primary, and so it threw it off. So that was not that. And I tell everybody that was not the elections office. Heider wanted us to share machines, and both our party and the Republican Party did not want to share machines. So Rick Barnes caught hell for some Republican precincts. We Democrats caught hell for our Democratic precincts, but that'll be solved in the general.
I took it from both, and I took it from both.
Yeah. And I found myself having to defend my election administrator.
No, but and I think, Alyssa, to illustrate it for people listening, what happens on the primary, I mean, and I understand it, this is what makes it so complex, is from the voter's point of view, it's a primary, it's one election. But what's really happening is 2 separate elections the same day at the same place. And so when technology has evolved and a lot of things could have been done, but the way that it's been traditionally done is, they're separated, physically separated to the point that where you could drive dividers and put it, half down, or you can actually have polling places like Republicans are in one classroom of the school and Democrats are in the other. They're that disconnected. And so, you try to estimate how many machines are you going to need, but this was always the risk. If the pattern shifts for whatever reason, interest, changes in the landscape, whatever, you thought you were going to have more R's and D's or D's than R's, and that's exactly what would happen. Now, that's a conversation for 2022 and the next primary. The parties are going to, we're going to have this conversation again and say, do we want to share? Do we want to try to guess again? For November, it's a single election and it's run by the county. So it changes, right? Now it's all on me to figure out what do we do. So, and this is important for people because it kind of goes back to voting in a pandemic. There was a big decision to make. How do we balance maximizing equipment to keep people in in a short time as possible in a polling place with social distancing? And what I recommended to the court and what we're planning for is we're going to maximize the number of machines that we can have in every place. They're not going to be social distance 6 feet. Because if you take, for example, the Mansfield Courthouse, if I recall well, we can fit there 2 strings, 24 machines. But they are probably a foot from each other. If we do the 6 feet apart, you're going to have 6 machines in that room. And your line's going to go 3 times around the building because you can only process 6 voters at a time. And so the times I've had this conversation with the court and with the parties back in March, we're saying, what's a bigger risk? That you stand for 5 minutes close to someone, both going to be asked to wear a mask and the whole thing, or that you stand 2 hours in line with everyone who's in line outside of the polling place. And so we've gone for, we have to maximize this. The only other alternative is to have like 2,000 polling places in Tarrant County, which, to tell the truth, we even had a hard time confirming the 340 that we're going to use this time. We're actually not going to have 340. We lost like, I think 7 was the count this morning. Mm-hmm. Can't get back. We had to move out of every church, private facilities. They have the right to tell us can't come in here. And so we had to move into a lot more schools and city halls. So there are some changes. So since we can't find more polling places, the only alternative was we need to put as many machines as we can in there to make sure. So we've maximized everything we can. The numbers might say, it looks like we're good with 12, have 24 if we can fit them in the room. That's been our philosophy. We spent $500,000 leasing additional machines from the vendor, have more everywhere. Early voting locations, they've been maximized. So where you used to have 12, 15, you're going to find 18 or 24 if the room allows. Where the room didn't allow growth, we look for larger rooms to have more machines so that we could try to meet that projection. And the projection we did by looking at 2018 and 16 in every location, we took the higher of the 2 numbers, then we increased by 15%, and then we rounded up the number of machines. So we're throwing everything we have at it as a bare minimum that we wanted to hit everywhere.
So you're looking at 2016, 2018 numbers.
Yes. So in a precinct or in a location where the 2016 turnout was higher than the 18, we took that number as a reference. But in some places, this happened. 2018 had more of a turnout than 2016. We took that number. So we always said, that means this is the worst case for this location. These many people may show up here. Let's use that number as a reference. And then let's bump it up out of registration growth. And then let's bump it up again out of 2020. Who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what I was going to ask. What else are you looking at? To you and Deborah, what do y'all expect? What do you expect based on your political, professional experience? What do you expect turnout to look like? What do you expect turnout to look like?
High, very high. Very high, and I think the absentees are showing that already.
Go ahead, Deborah.
So in 18, now think about it, in 18, we had over 500,000 voters, okay? We had Beto beat Cruz with 313,000 Democratic votes, and Cruz was right under that, so almost 600,000 voters. I think we're gonna get to to 750,000 voters. That was in an off year. This is a presidential election. And so if we got to 600, over 500,000 voters to 600,000 voters in an off year election, given the polarization of this election, I think we're going to, I'm sorry, somebody's sending me text. I think we're going to get, I think we're going to see a big lift.
And you agree with that, Heider? A big lift. So.
I mean, I don't know the number. All I can tell you is that our job is to prepare for the whole 1.2 million voters showing up. We can't have Alyssa show up and say, oh, Alyssa, we ran out of paper. You're going to have to come back in 4 years. We have to assume that everyone's going to show up. But I do think it's going to be very high. I'm just hoping that a lot of people hear the message of, then don't wait till election day and try to knock.
Yeah, and go and, yeah.
Okay, you assume it's going to be high. How are you preparing? So you have gotten more, you're renting more machines from the vendor?
Yeah.
Yes or no?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, we rented more machines. Obviously, we have a lot more paper. I mean, we may try to guess and say, 680, 750. We bought like 1.3 million sheets of ballot paper for the in-person voting. And that's without, the 100,000 people that voted on. So there's plenty of resources to make sure we can handle this. We're having all our locations, like I said, we're maximizing in certain places where we say, well, based on the past turnout, it should be enough with 8 machines, give them 12. You don't know where they're going to show up. And that's the other part of the process of preparing is, especially when you have vote centers, people can show up anywhere. And so we had seen for a year a pattern of people like city halls, people like courthouses. Those are the big, dense locations where people are passing by doing business and they just vote. But I don't know that this November, because a lot of people are staying home, those little neighborhood places that were kind of going down in the turnout are going to spike up again because people are, they're not going to work.
Yeah.
She quit her job to stay here with our daughter, so she would be looking for a place here, not near where her office was.
Yeah, and people are getting used to vote centers now. I know and Heider's been tracking that data, but I think people now are starting to, this will be our 4th election with vote centers. And I agree with Heider. I think some of the places where people are still staying home, because a lot of people are still staying home, we'll start to see a pickup in those areas.
And I don't know if they will start to see as in it will stay in the future, but in this context, we couldn't cut short and say, yeah, take some machines from that little church in the middle of the neighborhood because it's been going down for years and put them in the city hall because it's been going up. Because that little church may surprise you because people are staying home. So we, that's why we released the equipment and we added things everywhere. So we try not to say, take from here and add here. We tried to say, stay here and also add on the one that was going down. But yeah, a lot is what's the best guess you can make as to where people are going to show up at.
Okay, tell them, Heider, about I asked you a question via email about stadiums. What is your response to that?
About what?
Stadiums, the use of stadiums as polling places.
So stadiums, I've been asked that question a lot lately, and the answer is, and I'm going to tell this to Commissioner's Court when we go next week, I didn't include them in my plan for 2 reasons. I felt that we've been saying, not just the elections office, the county has been saying, I'm a department of the county. We don't want gatherings. We don't want gatherings. We don't want gatherings. Gatherings are focal points for spreading COVID. And so saying, well, now we're going to open a huge place for a lot of people to gather and vote is kind of going against that, right? And again, we can't ask people to wear a mask. We can't mandate wearing a mask to vote. So, one person without a mask who wants to make a point in a stadium where you have 1,000 people voting, problem, right?
No, you can
So, Lisa, can I wait?
Wait, let me give you the whole rationale for this. And then number 2, I only have stadiums down in Arlington and in maybe Dickey's Arena downtown. And I need to distribute my resources as much as I can covering the entire county. You're going to see, we're going to propose in a quarter plan where we are spreading out a lot more of the resources to say, instead of bringing a lot of people to one place, let's give them a lot of options to keep dispersing them into the area.
Well, but earlier
Yeah,
you said,
Lisa, let me weigh in on that, please, because this is my fear as your county chair. First of all, I am totally with Heider. Arlington has big stadiums, but you name me someplace else in Tarrant County that does. You just don't have it. And so, well, wait, let me finish. This is my fear.
you froze up just a second. So say that back up again about stadium.
Okay, so using those big arenas, we have Arlington. Now think about Tarrant County and how it's laid out. The big arenas are only in Arlington. I don't have a big arena in Colleyville, Hearst, Haltom City up that way. I really don't have anything in Fort Worth except Dickey's Arena and maybe over there. Here's my fear, and we have to be very careful about this as Democrats. I fought to get vote centers so that people could vote anywhere in the county. We have over 300 locations that people can go and vote. If people start trying to go to big arenas, they want to start taking away other locations, and then it makes it hard for people to get there. We fought to keep vote centers so that they'd be dispersed around the county so that people could get to them. One of Shirley Adams is on here. One of her big things is transportation. So
yep.
If we end up with 3 or 4 big vote centers, then how do people get there? And so this cycle, I am of the opinion that we stay with vote centers. We just got people there. The Republican county commissioners voted to allow us to keep all those sites. I thought it was going to be a big fight. Other counties had taken them away, but I felt like if we went to these big stadiums, we'd have another problem and we'd be removing neighborhood voting.
I think you rent more equipment. I think you in a large stadium, and other people can jump in a large stadium, you have more opportunity to social distance. When you're earlier we were talking about the Mansfield Sub Courthouse. The room is this big. So you can't have as many machines in there. You can't social distance in there. You can social distance in a stadium. You can social distance at Dragon Stadium in South Lake or College, whatever it is, South Lake, whatever. There are stadiums. They don't have to be Globe Life. They can be football stadiums. They can be, large stadiums. I'm not sure how y'all choose these little rooms anyway in these schools. I guess the schools tell you what room you can set up in. But I personally, and everybody else on here may agree with you. I don't see the harm setting up at a stadium. It's a nice, shiny new object, and you might get low propensity voters to go vote just because they get to walk in a stadium.
True, but at the same time, Alyssa, you may end up with 5,000 people showing up at 11 a.m. because they want to take the stadium tour, and now you can distance in the machine area, but the hallways, the parking lot, how are people going to get there? I mean, I know Arlington has public transportation and forward, but now you're packing people in a bus to go to a stadium. I mean, there are other things, the whole process that surrounds getting there that worries me a lot. I'm not saying we're right, but I am saying, and I'm getting ahead of what I'm going to tell the court on Thursday, but let's rehearse it. What I am saying is when people tell me it's the best practice, my question is, how can you know the best practice if we've never been through a pandemic?
Didn't say it was the best practice.
I don't find it convincing enough. I guess we'll compare experiences with the counties who do it after the election, and maybe we'll say, you know what, it was better, but we'll have it in our handbook. But right now, there is no convincing evidence, and I don't feel that we're going to be able to build a case of, yeah, it was definitely right and that we're not risking people. The other thing is, we have limited funds. We had $2 million for this. And the way I did it was I wanted to split it, kind of invest in absentee and in early voting and in voting in person. And so we bought a mail sorter that's being delivered this week. It cost almost $400,000. We bought ballot printers. We bought ballot scanners. We spent close to $750,000 just in equipment to be ready for absentee. The only way to say we turned around and we took a about $700 and something thousand just in leasing equipment and buying more poll books and things to help disperse and make voting in person more efficient. The only way to do something like 2 or 3 arenas would have been to sacrifice the investment in absentee, and that would have been a mistake, right? So we've got limited funds to tackle all of this, and we said, how do we invest them? Again, there's very little data that shows that that's going to benefit. I want to see it happening. I want to see that the Lakers arena doesn't, full of 10,000 people in LA to vote. And it's like, yeah, they were social distance where they were voting, but the line was an issue. Or,
Well,
gonna try it. We'll see how it goes in San Antonio.
yeah, what we know is that since voting centers have been open and operational, that we've struggled with lines, we've struggled with equipment, I mean, that's what we know.
Yeah.
And I'd like for us to, at some point, attempt to be cutting edge. And perhaps stadiums is bleeding edge, and you just don't, you don't want to take that risk. But we'll be able to see.
And keep in mind, Elisa, what we've seen with vote centers is a town hall, a city hall can easily take 10 times the number, can attract 10 times the number of people that a local polling place does. Imagine what a stadium's going to do, right? So in places like the Arlington Subcourthouse, the Southwest Subcourthouse, Keller Town Hall, we've seen, those places have 10, 12 times the number of people that a school brings in. And so it scares me to say, the Rangers gave us a stadium, a brand new stadium that everyone wants to see. You're going to have 100,000 people show up at the stadium. How are you going to handle that? That scares me. That's the nature of those big arenas. So that's why I said I'm going to go with a plan of dispersing people. And I think it's consequential with the mindset of we don't want gatherings. Let's disperse people.
You're going to have a gathering. It's going to be a mess. And that's what I tell people when I speak to them. And not I'm not being critical of the elections administration. It's just
that's fine.
Election where we're at. This election is going to be crowded. The lines are going to be long. The ballots are long. The polling places are small. It's going to be, there are going to be a lot of people.
That's where the key factor, the one that I can't control and the one that you can help me out with is, we are adding the absentee. If you are eligible for absentee, use it. So less people at the polling place. We're keeping the number of polling places and we're dispersing the crowd with our plan for the early voting. The one thing we can't control, but the voters can, is the voting experience time. Get your sample ballot, know your ballot, know what you're voting on, and that can be the difference between standing 2 minutes in front of the machine or standing 8 or 10 minutes in front of the machine.
Heider, people aren't. We all want that, and we want everybody that's registered to go vote, and they're not doing it. They're not going to do it. So we can preach that. We'll definitely be preaching it, telling people, hey, educate yourself. We always post the link to the voter lookup so people can go look at their ballot, and it never fails. Inevitably, as president of the NAACP, and just because, all of us who are engaged politically, how many of our friends call us and say, okay, I'm going to go vote. Tell me who to vote for. They know they're going to vote for this, and that, but all those down ballot races, county commissioner, all the judicial races,
opposition from the cities.
So we can say, get your ballot, study it, so you can stay in line. We always have campaigns that preach that, but realistically, I mentioned the state thing. Just because it's large, you can set the distance in there. Just because it's large doesn't mean everybody can come there to vote. You still have your social distance guidelines. So anyway, that's me. We need to check the chat and see what else. Who else has?
And you hit on something that goes with that question. What goes into choosing the size of the room? It's funny, but the law says that public buildings have to be made available for the conduct of elections. But what I want to suggest that we do to our legislators next session is that we change that and say, also the room within the public building that the elections administration chooses has to be made available, because we have schools where they might say, you know, we need the gym so we can have 24 machines, and they say, no, we're not giving you the gym, we're giving you the foyer and you can put 6 machines in there. And that translates into a line, but we know we need the big area. So the building, private facilities, obviously we cannot say, hey, we're taking over the church, it's ours, period. But public buildings, they have to be made available, but they still get to choose what room. So there's a process there of negotiating that and trying to convince them that we need the big room. Now in a presidential, nobody complains about the big room, they give it away, great. It's the May elections, it's the primaries, it's the constitutional amendment elections that we have a harder time getting the big rooms.
Okay.
We have another question in the chat. They want to know, will all TCC campuses still have polling places and portables?
We have added all the campuses. The only campus that is not on the list that we're bringing to Commissioner's Court next week is TCU. TCU said if you cannot mandate voters to wear masks, then nope. And so we won't be at TCU this time, unfortunately.
Okay. Deborah, did you hit all the committee's questions?
I think I did. So let me just say a few things, and this is kind of different from Heider about what we're doing as a party. And I know that the NAACP is nonpartisan, so I'm gonna try to keep it as nonpartisan as I can.
Well, you know, right. We invited Mr. Barnes as well, and okay. So that for this reason, you say what you need to say, and he says what he needs to say.
Okay, well, very good. So number one, let me make sure you all understand what's going on. Voter registration does not end for this election until October the 5th. And so we just got 50,000 voter registration forms from the state party. We are giving them to House district coordinators. We have 11 House districts in Tarrant County, and we are splitting them out. We have some intrepid souls, including me, that are out doing lit drops. And so we are still registering voters. So I'm going to tell you, I know that you all have an active voter registration committee. Please keep going until October the 5th. I just registered 3 folks on Saturday. I'm a voter registrar. Now it's nonpartisan, Heider, and I know that. So, but I'm going to tell you, keep registering folks up until the deadline to register folks, and then we'll keep after that. But so number one, understand that. Number two, we're running phone banks. In fact, I'm missing a phone bank right now that the state party put together for us. We have over 40,000 eligible Democratic voters in Tarrant County who are eligible to vote by mail. We have been reaching out to those ID Democrats to urge them to get their application in if they have not filled out an annual ballot. And so we have set up phone banks, virtual phone banks, to get to them. If you all are interested in joining one of those virtual phone banks, please send me a text or reach out to me at tcvp.net, because we have found that during COVID, you know, we can't knock on doors, but we can make phone calls and we can do text. So we're doing all of that. We also ordered, just so you all know, big signs that say vote Democrat. And you all need to understand, our coordinated campaign says vote for every Democrat from the top of the ballot to the bottom of the ballot. And so we are trying to force people down through that ballot. They're great candidates, even at the bottom of the ballot. You have Sandra Lee, who is running for a constable. You have Reverend McGinty, who's running for a constable. That's the last race on the ballot. You have Kalisha Lyons. We have somebody in District 1. We have somebody in District 5, District 8. And so we want you to go all the way to the bottom of the ballot for the drop off. So we've got big signs, 100 signs, that if you have locations in Arlington that you'd like for us to put them, send us a note. It says vote Democratic from the top of the ticket to the bottom of the ticket. And then we do have clubs that are doing lit drops. And so, Madam President, you have a great House District Coordinator in House District 94, Andrea Rader. And so we're going to be getting her signs and literature, but we're going to be working in every House district. And so I think that we're in a good position because of the pandemic, because Democrats kind of hunkered down at the very beginning. And so we started doing Zoom and vote and telephone calls before a lot of people did. And so we've been reaching a lot of voters, a lot of what I call one-tier and two-tier voters who haven't, who don't always vote consistently. And those are the people that we've really been reaching out to make sure we get them to the polls. And that's why I think, Heider, your number is going to be very, very high, because that was our strategy in 18 to reach what we call 1 and 2T Democrats. And you see what happened. We got over 313,000 Democrats to vote for Beto O'Rourke. And so we have been just pounding away at those, at the remainder of those 1 and 2D Democrats. So I think you're going to see a nice lift in voting. The one thing I want to tell you is I do know, and trust me, I have come to admire Crystal Mason as an amazing woman of courage, and I say that she is now a friend because I talk to her so much. But I don't want to see anybody in the position that she's in. So no, I'm not going to try to minimize voter suppression and what they try to do to us. But I want people to understand that they're trying to scare you into not voting. And I see it all the time when I'm talking to young men who've been incarcerated, is they literally are afraid to go and vote. I see it when I talk to our Latinx community. Many people are afraid, but they shouldn't be, but that's a tactic. And so I know that there are those cases where, I know that there are those cases like Crystal Mason, but I also know that 99% of people can go and vote without issue, and we have to make them, those are the people that we're trying to get to the polls. And okay. So, yeah, so I'm sorry if I talked a lot, but
no, that was good, because we don't typically go this long without. Yeah, you're freezing, but you're good. You're good now. So okay. I want you and then Heider to kind of wrap up with some good basics. I like what you said about not being afraid, but I think our goal is to make people aware. There's so many questionable things. So just some basics.
So number one, Elisa, if somebody is worried about whether they're registered to vote, and we do it all the time, Tarrant County has something called voter lookup. You can look it up. You have to have your birth date, okay? We didn't used to, but they put that safeguard in now. But you can check and see if you're registered to vote. So you can do that. So I would tell you, if you got any worries, and usually what I do is when I run into people and they don't know if they're registered, I say, give me your birthday and we can look.
Is it just?
No, she froze, and I think she's gone.
Okay.
You up. So tell them to take it. Okay.
No, she's not. No, she's not.
I hope that you're hearing me. Vote by. Am I stuck?
Say it again. Say the last thing again. She's stuck.
Put it in the chat because I'm still frozen. Okay, I'm going to put it in the chat too because I think I'm frozen. But if you're eligible to vote by mail, please get that app and
Heider, can you hear me? Okay, we're gonna skip you, Deborah.
Early. And
Deborah, you go to the chat, please. Thank you.
yeah,
What's the difference between, Heider, what's the difference between absentee voting and vote by mail?
There is none. Texas only contemplates absentee. And the terms, I mean, okay, so let's watch what we say here so we don't create any political clashes, right? The term absentee generally refers to, or I guess that's how it started historically, for someone who is absent from the county. So if you're not going to be here on election day, we're going to open up a window, and that's how early voting started. That's how vote by mail started, right? If being available or on site on election day is a challenge to you, we're going to open up all these mechanisms. So we as a nation, we started creating early voting. We're going to let you vote ahead of election day. Absentee voting, we're going to send you the ballot. You can send it back. The military is probably the origin of early voting. And so from there, we've gone evolving into, well, if some people can vote by mail, why can't everyone? And so some states have taken the lead into saying, well, it's no longer absent. It's not, if you're absent, it's anyone, right? If Heider can do it because he won't be in the county, why can someone else? And so you've got states like Washington State, Hawaii, Oregon, Colorado, who said anyone can get a ballot, and they call it vote by mail because it's no longer absentee, because you don't have, it's not based on the rationale behind it is not you're absent on election day. What you end up doing in both cases is the same thing, except in states where they've gone all vote by mail, you don't have to ask for a ballot. So the difference in those states like Colorado and Oregon and I think Washington State and Hawaii is you don't even have to ask for the ballot. It's going to come in like your credit card statement of account. It's just going to be in the mailbox waiting for you.
Mm-hmm.
In states where that is not mandatory, the difference has been anyone is eligible. So you still have to put in the request and then you get the ballot. And if you don't put in the request, you don't get it. That's how it was when I was in California. They're migrating to everyone gets a ballot, no questions asked, even if you don't ask. And then you have states who, like Texas, where it's you have to be eligible or have a reason to request an absentee. So not everyone is eligible. But
If you're 65 and older and you voted by mail once before, will you automatically get a ballot the next time and the next time, or you have to request it?
If the form you sent us at the beginning of the year was an annual application, yes. So the easiest way to know is if you got one in March and you automatically got one in July without asking, then yes, you probably did an annual. If you just put in the form for July and you don't remember whether it was an annual, just call us. In any case, if you're not sure, just call us and we'll tell you, yep, we see the application and file the annual. You're going to get one already. Or November, or no, we don't see anything on file. You need to send us a new one.
Okay. So some of the basics, you can't drop off your vote by mail. I mean, there are no drop boxes for vote by mail. You can drop it at your street location.
Yeah, I'm going to pick up where Deborah was, what I think she was trying to say. Basics, make sure you're registered and make sure you're registered where you live. So you want to go to the voter lookup, I put it there in the chat, elections.tarrantcounty.com/voter lookup. Put in your name, your date of birth, and it'll show you you're registered at this address. These are the districts you live in. And what's coming up once we finish the ballots is, here's your sample ballot, and here's where you can go both on early voting and on election day, depending on when you want to vote. So you can do the whole thing right there. Basics, make sure you're registered. If you got married, if your name changed, if you moved, then you need to update your registration. You need to send us a new card so we can update your file and give you the ballot for the districts you live in. Basics, if you are eligible for a ballot by mail, you can call us and we'll tell you if you have an application on file or how to get one and how to make sure that you will receive that ballot. Don't wait, do it early, do it now. That way you have more time to return it. And if you ask for it, you can either mail it back if it's early enough, or you can drive it down to our office and we'll take it. We'll receive it. It's called in-person delivery. You can only deliver your own ballot and you have to show ID when you come to our office. So if you're going to bring a friend who wants to return the ballot, most likely you're going to be driving, you have your license with you, remind your friend, hey, bring an ID. You're going to need it to return the ballot if you're doing the in-person delivery. And if you're voting in person, please, please, please wear a mask. Not only a health recommendation, but I think everybody, feels more comfortable if we're all wearing masks these days. Who knows what will happen between now and November, but if things are like they are right now, please wear a mask. Keep your social distance, same thing that we're doing everywhere else, but my recommendation is go to the voter lookup, get your ballot, know what you're voting on, and that way your process is going to be quicker at the polls. You cannot use these at the polls, okay? So if you're going to bring your list of candidates or preferences for the propositions that you're going to vote on, bring them on paper. You can pull out a sheet of paper in the polls and just watch that and vote on the machine, but don't write it down on a little note on your cell phone because you're not allowed to use a cell phone at the polls.
Okay. With regard to the mask, even though the state has a mask mandate, election code says nothing can prohibit you from voting, even the governor's mask mandate.
Even if the governor puts in a mask mandate, and even if there's a federal mandate, and even if there's a county mandate, and even if there's anything, you show up at the door of the polling place and you say, I want to vote, no one can stop you from getting to your ballot.
Got it. Okay. Anybody else? Is Stephanie still here to look at the chat?
Yes, and here's my last message probably, because if we're doing basics and we're wrapping this up, this is the other main message I want everyone to get. Your elections office is your source for information. If you have any doubts, if you run across any posts on social media, if you have any concerns, call us. 817-831-8683. Follow us on Twitter, at Tarrant Election. Find us on Facebook. Send us an email, electionsinfo@tarrantcounty.com. There's so many ways to find us. Send us the questions. 99% of the times, not to say 100, when you ask a question on Facebook or on Twitter, it's me. That's what I was doing, actually. It's always, us telling you what you can do, what you cannot do, what you have to be careful with, where you can find the correct information. That's how you fight misinformation. That's how you fight all these things. You go to the source, and the source is the Office of Elections.
Okay.
Know something about your party, and then you're going to have to reach out to Deborah or Rick. But if it's about the elections process and the balloting and the polling places and the elections law, it's us.
Two additional things. If people run into issues on election day, early voting, or whenever they go cast their ballot,
right,
who should they call?
So obviously we want you to call us. Same number, and this phone system will route you, or worst case, we will. Because we want to know, hey, I just saw this happen, or there's a machine down. I mean, whatever information you give us, we'll process and we'll react to it. Now, of course, if you want to report the elections office, then who you have to go to is the Secretary of State. And if I am right, the number is 800-252-8683. That's the Texas Secretary of State. Okay, so if you wanted to say, hey, I have a complaint about the elections office, you can go to them. You can also go, of course, to the county judge's office and say, hey, I have a complaint about we're a county department, so you can complain with them. And then there are other protections like the Department of Justice, mainly Department of Justice, if you wanted to go that.
Okay. Well, my thought is, let's say on election day, or even during early voting, you guys are slamming busy. Your staff is busy. So what is the expected response time people can expect to have if they're in a polling place? You know how people are, they have a car accident, a fender bender, and they're not moving until the police get there.
Yep.
What is the expected response time?
So one of the things we did with this COVID money is we're doubling the size of the phone bank, precisely to be able to have shorter wait times. And the county got a new phone system, and so bottom line is we used to have a number of seats, we've doubled that, and the phone system allows that to grow into anyone available into the office. So in practical terms, we can have up to 100 people answering the phone at any given point in time. We believe that's going to help us keep those wait times really short, really concise. Because what used to happen in the past was we have to separate, right? We have 10 people to tell you where you can go vote, and 10 people to take judge calls about polling place, and 10 people. And so sometimes you had, 20 people waiting on this phone queue, but none on this. And we've been able to work that to have a virtual size of the queue growing. And bottom line, we expect those wait times to be very, very short compared to the past.
And finally, it's all I have is, do you need, go back to need for poll workers or election judges and how they can reach you again. You said that at the beginning, but I'd like for you to reiterate.
Call our office, again, 817-831-8683. You can also send an email, electionday@tarrantcounty.com, and just tell us, I want to help. I want to help as a judge, or I want to help as a clerk, or I want to help during early voting or on election day. Tell us what you have in mind, and we'll take all the help we can get. If you know someone who's bilingual, Spanish or Vietnamese, that's always probably the harder challenge. Probably not so much Spanish at this point, but Vietnamese. And since we're vote centers, it's no longer like, okay, the Vietnamese population is probably in these precincts concentrated. They can go anywhere, so we have to have people who speak Vietnamese in all precincts in the county. So getting that help is always something. If you know someone who can help, please. And Deborah says she's frozen and she's very sorry.
Okay. Yeah, she's frozen.
Yeah.
Damon, is there anything else, Mr. Chair? Is Damon frozen? I think that's all we have, and it should be. It's 9 o'clock. So Heider and Madam Chair, I'd like to thank you both for taking time. I think we have had get questions answered. So thank you so much for staying with us so long, and tell your families thank you.
Thank you guys for inviting us, and we're always welcome to be here and always available for anything you want.
Okay, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for participating and sticking around.
Be sure to read your chat for any notes you might have missed that we put in there, some phone numbers and email addresses where you can get more information.
Oh, yeah.
Before you clock out. Thank you all for coming, and we look forward to seeing you next month.